When SUVs, sport utility vehicles, first came out, they promised to be reliable, fun, practical, but things have changed in the last few years. Now, manufacturers are making them far more complex, way too powerful, and they're finding ways to cut corners, and now, unfortunately, no two SUVs are the same in terms of quality. I'm going to share a list of 10 of the worst garbage SUVs that won't even make it 100,000 miles, no matter what you do. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. The first one on our list is this little vehicle here. Now clearly it's a Nissan, and Nissan's built some of the most robust vehicles over the years. The Armada is a solid unit. We talk about some of the old 300ZXs from back in the 80s and 90s. They made some great vehicles, but things have fallen off their wagon of late. This little ride right here won't make it 100,000 miles unless you do something astronomical and spend an arm and three legs just to keep it on the road, because this one has a whole host of problems. Other than the fact it's not pretty to look at, and in 2012 when whoever it was that designed this vehicle really thought that this was a good idea, think again. But here we have the Nismo RS, and it's a Nissan, and clearly, as you can tell by the front end, this is the Nissan Juke. And yes, it's not a great looking unit. The interior is very Spartan on these as vehicles as well. What kind of problems are you going to anticipate with this, and why wouldn't it make 100,000 miles? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, in general, a lot of the materials and the fit and finish of this vehicle is not necessarily the best, but the most important thing to think about is it's well known that the transmission in these units are going to give up the ghost well before 100,000 miles. There's lots of documented cases, 80, 90 to 100,000 miles, and the transmission goes boom. And the worst part is transmissions can cost $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and when you look at the depreciation of this vehicle, by the time it gets to 100,000 miles, it's probably only worth $6,000 or $7,000, and basically a transmission can write this vehicle off. Not only that, fuel sensors, there's pressure sensors on there. There was actually an NHTSA warning under the engine here because there was pressure sensors that weren't properly fastened, allegedly from the factory, and they would prevent starting, low fuel pressure issues, as well as spewing fuel, and it was a potential for fire. On top of that, there are some electrical issues that are pretty common with some of these vehicles, and another common issue is the timing chain. On these vehicles, the timing chain is what rotates. The engine is connected between the crankshaft, your valve train, and it's the chain that keeps everything in sync. But your valve train, when it goes out of sync, you can literally have piston and valve collision, and that's basically decimating your engine. That's not an uncommon issue, and if you hear that rattling noise under the hood, especially on a cold startup, that could be the beginning of the end. The Nissan Juke is one of those that won't make 100,000 miles. And right there's the next one, right here, dressed in white. It's a pretty little unit, isn't it? Kind of like a milk carton. What do we have here? The kitty cat. And of course we have the S. That means this is the V6 version right here. Love the headlights. You've got LED right there. Gorgeous LED strips right on there. And of course they have their badging Jaguar. Look, gorgeous. Fold away, one touch accent in. Lots of sunroof to let in all the light for the happy little customers, at least for the warranty period. Here we're looking at an FPace right here by Jaguar. Yes, they come all-wheel drive, and they do get a set of real exhaust tips. You don't see that too often anymore. Beautiful piano gloss finishing along the top as well as along the bottom. But unfortunately, there's some problems with these vehicles, and with the Ingenium engines, lots of problems. Timing chains, fuel issues, coolant leaks. Need I say more? Yes, the automatic transmission, ZF 8-speed, absolutely bulletproof, but that's not what we're worried about here. It's the engines that leak coolant, blow gaskets, and are really prone to blowing. Timing chains, water pumps, thermostats, rod bearings are known to go on some of these engines. Yes, not the most durable engines. I personally have an F-Type R. I love it. It's so great in so many other ways, I kind of look past it. But you cannot deny that the F-Pace is one of those vehicles that lacks major reliability as well as the technical aspects. You'll get so done with spending your hard-earned dollars taking this vehicle to the shop time and time again because of all the electrical gremlins. Infotainment system is one that never works properly. You might get the navigation working for a month or two, then you got to take it in, and like my personal experience, I actually take it in, it said, SIM card can't read. They changed the SIM card after 2 weeks. My car sat in the shop because they couldn't get one. And of course, this goes on and on and on. Not to mention maintenance costs are through the roof, and that's why in a lot of cases, these vehicles just won't make it 100,000 miles. A Jaguar FPace. This one here is the next big disaster. That won't make it 100,000 miles. There's way too much. This is one of the most catastrophic vehicles in recent history. I can't even believe manufacturers still create this type of product. And clearly it's another great piece by Ford right there. As you can see, yeah, they've got the great little grille there. And obviously it's a small diminutive little unit right there. Beautiful little headlights, very simple to change out, which is good, but this looks like a baby Escape, just a little bit smaller. Yeah, you have basic lights. Yeah, you have some great wheels on there, and that typical fold-away mirrors. Look, single access, one touch in. Of course, you get the great little roof racks on top. That's not the big problem. The big problem is not just that it drives like junk, and the 1-liter engine that's buried under the hood is literal dumpster fire of a vehicle. Other than transmission issues, electrical problems, we won't even talk about that. Those are bad enough to write this vehicle off. How about the engine? That's right, instead of using a timing chain and an oil pump, you know, normal oil pumps, they use a set of gears that are rough and robust, and they're tough, and they'll just turn and grind, and they're interchanged, and they're interlocked, and they won't fail. No. Ford had to be too smart here. This is, in my personal opinion, where they cut some corners and they decided, oh, you know, let's use a dry belt for everything. So when that belt goes, and it does, because there's been many cases where the belt goes, you lose your power brakes, you lose your power steering, it becomes dangerous, and then even worse, the oil pump can let go as well, because the oil pump dry belt goes, and then with no oil supply to the engine when it's running, that basically means you're in for a world of hurt, and you're going to spend thousands of dollars. If you haven't done it on the gearbox already, the engine is lined up waiting for you to spend a whole pile of money. The EcoSport is one of those rare vehicles. I know there's a redesign for 24, but for now, this is a vehicle you definitely want to avoid like the plague. And right there's the next one that's going to not make it 100,000 miles. What are we talking about here? It's a Land Rover product, and it's Range Rover, as you see right here. These are the most beautiful, luxurious rides, but not too many people can actually afford to own these other than the king and queen outside of warranty, because there are so many expensive repairs. Jaguar, you thought that was bad? Range Rover, 10 times worse. Specifically when you're talking the full-scale Range Rover like this one we're looking at right here. And let's talk about a few of those problems. Of course, lots of electrical problems. Of course, you got lighting issues, door hatch issues with some of these vehicles. Underneath, you have all kinds of problems with the suspension systems as well as the differential and transmission. And yeah, it has some great detail like this, and look at these flush handles. These freeze up in the winter, by the way, so you get snow and ice in there, cakes in there, and you can't get that door open. A big problem. That's more of an ergonomic issue, but it's a big issue, as do these door windows become an issue as well. With freeze up, you have nice fold-away parts like this, and all kinds of other nice piano gloss finishing. Look at that great detail as well. It's an absolutely gorgeous vehicle. But the outgoing models that had the V8 that are supercharged were a big issue, and now they're sharing BMW's twin-turbo 4.4-liter V8 engine under the hood. Either way, it's huge expense, and reliability is not its middle name. You can expect coolant leaks after 60, 70,000 miles. You can expect water pumps and thermostats. You can definitely expect turbo or supercharger issues depending on the generation. And more importantly, carbon fouling is an issue with these. You're going to need to address that with walnut blasting or maintenance on your intake. And as well, brakes, big problem. But we also can't forget, these vehicles come with air ride suspension right here, and when you see them settle down, that usually means that the air ride system is shot. And they have these airbags, and they're very, very expensive. When they go, the vehicle sags, and it's going to be thousands of dollars in the shop. Now that generally means there's compressors, airbags, lines, valves, as well as relays, a whole host of parts just to keep the air ride and the suspension leveled out for that vehicle. Way too much going on here. Then you have the most complex engine. Then you also have the most complex electrical technology in these vehicles that are guaranteed going to cause some failures down the road. There's also been notes about issues with the rear differential on these, leaking oil as well as not vented properly. But Range Rovers in general just have way too much technology going on there, more than anybody ever anticipated. Now, back in the day, Range Rover represented a great off-road vehicle. Now that's owned by Tata Motors, it's just a company that was looking to increase their brand recognition, and that's why Tata Motors got a hold of it. But Range Rover, definitely not going to make 100,000 miles. Guaranteed you won't find one on the classifieds. And here's another one right here. As you can see, we're looking at a Hyundai right here. And Hyundais and Kias have been very popular in recent years because people are getting bored of Hondas and Toyotas. So people are just thinking, hey, let's try that. That's cute and spunky and fresh. But what they don't realize is there's millions of people wronged because of quality issues with a lot of these vehicles. Let's talk about it and why I truly believe the Hyundai Tucson that we're looking at here won't make 100,000 miles. Been lots of complaints about heat shielding around the catalytic converter under underneath the engine there or underneath the body. As well, noises and leaks, squeaks, rattles, wind noise. Just a very low quality, low grade feel. You're getting all kinds of noise inside the cabin. Climate system issues, as well as in-car electronics have been typical, a big issue as well there. Drive system in general, transmissions, rear differentials, and as well brakes. Yes, we're talking about bad brakes, suspension issues, very fragile. They're not holding up very well. But where it really gets ugly, Hyundai and Kia here typically have been putting their engines together, substandard parts, rod bearings, crank issues, machining issues, getting metallics in the oiling system, as well as fastening and assembly in the manufacturing facilities, means that there's a host of different reasons why a lot of these vehicles are failing. But the bottom line is engines are blowing up. Hyundais, Kias, and allegedly, I'm going to have to add that because people are waiting a long time. So while some people say, I love my Hyundai, it's going and going and going, then the next person is complaining that they just had to get an engine replaced, or that they're still waiting for an engine replaced, because that's the problem. I'm hearing stories, some people are getting replacement engines done soon, others are having to wait a long period of time. The engine under these hoods right here is not all that robust, and clearly one of those that it's a ticking time bomb, and you're almost anticipating and waiting for that very day that it fails. The next one in line is one that I personally am extending this out. That's my own personal opinion because the vehicle's slightly new yet. But if you're looking at a vehicle like an Alfa Romeo like this, and a Stelvio, or some other SUV like this, or vehicle in the stable, this is probably your safest bet. The Stelvio is sort of their larger mid-size SUV, but now what we have is their smaller brother, and we're talking about the Tonale right there. And this vehicle here, in my opinion, will not make 100,000 miles, not even close. It also shares the underpinnings with Dodge and their little stinker wagon too, and it's just one of those vehicles, it was never really built to last. Yes, it's cute, it's sporty, it has some great details. I mean, look at it. I love the light bar on the back here, love the low profile lighting, gorgeous wheels, I'll give them that. Look, beautiful handles, and look at oversized glass sunroof, black high piano glass finishing, and look, I love the headlights as well. Alfa Romeo, you can't go wrong with the front logo, vents. But if my extrapolation is correct, you tell me I'm wrong in about 2 or 3 years from now when some of these vehicles start falling off the planet because of quality issues. Now, I've been watching the forums, I've been engaging and talking to some folks that have been buying some of these, and there's been a host of issues. Let's talk about some of the problems and why these will not last. People are talking already about issues with lighting problems. They're talking about windows and all kinds of electrical technology, the HVAC system, as well as the infotainment, glitches and jams out from time to time. There's also issues now. It sounds like people are commenting with actual noise on the drivetrain and the vehicle making a rattling noise all over the place. We also talk about things, for example, with that engine. And people who have owned these now are saying it's starting to sound like a bunch of wrenches and noisy cans in a metal garbage bin. So it's just one of those vehicles, does not seem to be holding up all that well. And the long-term lifespan just does not look all that thrilling. So it doesn't seem to matter whether you're talking about electrical problems, whether you're talking mechanical noises and issues, that definitely feels very fragile, and the time will tell. But I don't think the Alfa Romeo Tonale like this is going to last 100,000 miles. And the next one on the list that just won't make 100,000 miles is this little rig right here. Clearly it's a Jeep, and what I'd say is the older variations of this were quite durable. Back in the 80s and 90s, we had the square boxes. They were simple and they were durable. Not well made, but at least they didn't have a lot to fail on them. This is a different storyline here. Obviously, fit and finish is a bit of a problem here. That's always a quality control issue with some of these vehicles. Of course, wheels, pretty hard to mess those up, but we're talking about the Cherokee here. Yeah, you've got electronics that are known to fail like that. Of course, other electronics and electrical components that fail like this. Yes, it is 4x4. That's why people like these vehicles, because they have the Jeep moniker, the Jeep name, and that's why people keep coming back. But people are gluttons for punishment. The unfortunate part with these vehicles is that you can expect automatic transmission failures, a very common issue with a lot of these vehicles, more specifically with some of the programming, wiring harnesses issues, and jerky, stuttering, and as well just slipping altogether. Catastrophic failures, going to be a huge amount of money, 5 or 6 grand for a new transmission. As well, coolant leaks, oil leaks, common issue, and guess what? Oil consumption are huge on these vehicles. Of course, you got lots of plastic on there, easy access in, but even with the TIPM, the totally integrated power module, it's sure that you're going to have electrical problems. Power windows, gauges, lights, power mirrors, all going to be a problem at some point. You may even get a stop run because the fuel pump is affected there too. So sadly, the Jeep Cherokee is one of those SUVs, probably won't make 100,000 miles. If you do, Count yourself lucky. And here's the next one here. You always saved up all your pennies. You thought one day I'm going to buy myself a Mercedes-Benz, and this is what you decided to buy. What is this Mercedes? Yeah, they have some great decal here. Look, all this filler plastic every which way. Yeah, it has all the great technology, mirrors that fold away, beautiful running gear, of course, big oversized glass on the roof. This is a GLB 250 Mercedes, and it's a 4MATIC, meaning it's got all-wheel drive here, laser cut rims, one-touch access in front and back. It's a beautiful little ride, and it's a turbo 4-cylinder engine, makes a little over 200 ponies, all-wheel drive, has all the luxury amenities. You probably think it's good to go. So I both talked to owners as well as scoured the forums, and there's a whole collective issue. Now, the problem is, there's a big one here, why it won't make 100,000 miles. Wind noise. People are complaining about getting wind noise through into the cabin, becoming very, very annoying. It questions the quality, integrity of the vehicle, as well as infotainment system issues, glitching, and of course the new full-size screen is something to behold. It looks great, but as with all new technology, it has its challenges. So that can get very expensive and quickly write off the value of a vehicle. Now, while the transmission itself is pretty solid in these vehicles, there's other challenges with people talking about paint. Now, that's not a reliability issue, but they get brand new paint and you see the little rust specks within the paint. That definitely speaks to some of the quality control issues. I've heard of other people needing to replace a new purge valve with a vehicle that's brand new, check engine lights right out of the bucket, and a host of strange noises coming from the front end here, the transmission, as well as the front differential, rear differential, and all of that equipment, causing all kinds of strange noises, squeaks, rattling, and clunking noises. But where it all gets really bad and where you can quickly dissolve a vehicle and its life is what's under the hood, and that's what about the engine? Well, they're talking about that turbo 4-cylinder engine, and there's already been cases where they've had to replace engines, or at least the heads, the upper end of the heads, the valves, the springs, as well as the camshafts, the top end of the engine, the part that allows fuel and air in and allows the exhaust out. That's a part that's gone awry in some cases, and there's even been a notable catastrophic engine failure where the vehicle literally threw a rod. Yeah, would you believe it? A brand new Mercedes-Benz with all its precision engineering and manufacturing, and it literally blew a rod right out of the factory. So there's clearly some challenges with quality control. The engine's a little fragile. As mentioned before, Nissan and Renault got together, built this car in North America, clearly not a European version, and it's not necessarily everything somebody chalked it up to be. Unfortunately, this Mercedes GLB is one of those vehicles that won't make 100,000 miles, in my opinion, no matter what you do. And here's another one right here, this little Ford Escape, as you can see, worn off. This car looks like it's rode hard, put away wet. Yeah, why not? Because by the time you get to about 50, 60,000 miles, it's pretty much a done deal. 100,000 miles, forget about it. Not likely you're gonna get there. And of course, look, all the carbon and the burning that comes out of the exhaust tips. Not a great vehicle. Sure, it looks spry, and it was a nice new design and departure from what Ford was doing back in the day. Obviously, they have these new little Pep Boy Canadian Tire style details like that, and an upgraded style of headlights. And it is a very cab forward design, so it was definitely breakthrough and unique and interesting. But trust me, that's where it all ends right there. Now, I personally know somebody who bought this back in 2012 when this generation first showed up, and he decided to keep it simple, went with the front wheel drive and the naturally aspirated older 4-cylinder engine. He's been okay. He's had a few little problems with it. The engine has a little bit of an interesting noise to it, but it's about as simple as a Ford Escape as you can get. The problem is with these vehicles, the early generation, when you had the EcoBoost or EcoTurd engine, you actually had a lot of issues. Timing chains, specifically even transmission issues, but that engine was a real problem and a real dud, because not just turbos and wastegates, but the problem was you actually had coolant. Blown head gaskets were a big issue here. That's right, when you actually get coolant into the combustion chamber or outside the engine, because that gasket didn't maintain between the engine block as well as the head, it let go. That's a common issue, as well as it can seep within the cylinder and sit there, continually fill up the cylinder with coolant, which takes a toll and can actually cause a very quick deterioration of the engine itself. You'll see white exhaust smoke coming out of the back there often when you see that scenario, because that usually means that the coolant is being consumed, and that's not an uncommon thing, to the point where all of a sudden the engine finally goes boom and it's all over but the crying. So these Ford Escapes, definitely with the EcoTurd engines, not built to last. Found on road, deceased? Yes. Ford, the Escape. And this piece of junk won't make it 100,000 miles either. Oh, no, the Toyota, of course, that will, absolutely. but this unit here. And now I actually did a review on this on 6-Speed Reviews. I'll show you that link at the end. But here we have another vehicle that potentially has no lifespan beyond 100,000 miles, and I'll explain a little bit about that. Obviously, we're talking about Kia, and we know Kia and Hyundai have had a lot of challenges with durability or quality, and even though this brand ranks for some strange reason high in reliability, that's just because it doesn't necessarily not start, but it's all the time in between, the nickel and dime issues, the quality control, and then of course, a blown engine doesn't necessarily imply reliability if it gets you to 100,000 miles. You've got a basic set of lights, projector lamps right here. Look at these beautiful lights. You've got fog lights down there, beautiful alloy wheels, not quite laser cut, but I love that gunmetal gray on there, basic LED strip, and of course, very simplistic right here. You do get no sunroof on this unit, but you do get this beautiful brushed aluminum roof rack here, and it has some interesting detail along the back. Look, LED strips. This is the Seltos by Kia, as I already mentioned. Even along the bottom, it has some nice detailing along there, and all this cladding means it's not going to look like junk after a year or two. But unfortunately, there's been way too many problems to ignore with these vehicles. First of all, Kia and Hyundai, if I'm a betting person, we know that a lot of their engines have been very problematic. They have been full of trying to replace engines for people in some of their other drivetrains, but this one should likely be no different. Now, yes, it's somewhat reliable, but there have been problems. Glass issues, quality fitment issues, inconsistent paintwork, squeaks, rattles. Of course, parking brake, where you actually put it into park, you try to put the vehicle into park and it just doesn't fully engage, or when you're taking it out of park to get going and it doesn't actually disengage, and now you're locked up and you can't get moving. That's one of the issues, and that's why there's a transmission unlock in that vehicle. If you look in the console, you'll find it there. The other problem is, of course, the transmission itself, where it slips. It's a terrible transmission. Some of the units come with a CVT transmission, definitely not a quality unit. And we know it's buzzy, whiny, definitely not inspiring, but unfortunately we know that that can add up to a world of hurt in terms of repair bills as well. There's been lots of people as well complain about this not starting or stalling. It's running and inadvertently just shuts off or stalls, and not because of the shut-off system or the start-stop system, but it just stops running at even while you're cruising down the road. There's been lots of complaints about that. I'm going to say that likely my prediction and predicted reliability is weak on these vehicles, and even more so, it won't make 100,000 miles. I almost guarantee that. And with all of that said, be sure to check right there. If you're looking for a reliable vehicle this year, 2024, that might be your bet. I've got you covered. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye.